play the game of spoons, first, set up the game. To do this, players will need a standard 52-card deck of cards, so any jokers or extra cards should be removed from the deck. If you are playing with a large group of 7 or more players, it is best to play the game with 2 decks of cards. Next, get 1 less spoon than there are players in the game. So in a 4-player game, players would need 3 spoons. The game of spoons does not only have to be played with spoons. Players can also use other items such as pieces of candy. As long as you have 1 less of the item than there are players in the game, players can be creative in the items they use. It should be noted that the items should be something that is safe to be grabbed quickly. There is a reason the game is called spoons, and not knives or forks. All players in the game will sit in a circle with the spoons in the middle of the playing area, so they are accessible to all players in the game. After setting up the spoons, each player will get their starting hand cards. To do this, 1 player will be the dealer. They will deal 4 cards to each player. The remaining cards in the deck will stay next to the dealer. Each player will look at their hand cards, but keep them hidden from all other players in the game. They can arrange their cards in any way they choose, but it is best to at least group cards of the same value together. After setting up the game, players are ready to begin playing. The game of spoons is a fast-paced, card-passing game. Players are trying to collect 4 cards of a kind in their hand. After a player does this, they will grab a spoon. All other players will then try to grab a spoon before the spoons run out. 1 player will not get a spoon each round of the game. To start the game, the dealer will draw the top card of the deck and look at it. They will then decide whether or not to keep that card. If the dealer decides they do not want the card, they will pass it, face down, to the player to their left. If they decide to keep the card, they will add it to their hand and choose one of the cards from their hand to pass to the player to their left, face down. The next player will look at the passed card and decide whether to pass it to the next player, or to add it to their hand and pass one of their hand cards to the player to their left. While the first card is making its way around the table, the dealer will immediately draw the next card from the deck, look at it, and decide whether or not to keep it. The dealer will decide the speed of the game. They do not have to wait until the next player passes their card. Because of this fact, if a player takes longer to decide on a card, it is possible for them to have a pile of cards to look at. Each player will continue to look at the cards passed to them and decide whether to keep them or to pass them to their opponent. If the dealer runs out of cards in the deck, they will simply form a new deck from the cards that were passed to them and continue playing. If a player is able to get 4 of a kind, they are now free to take a spoon from the middle. The player may immediately take a spoon after getting a 4 of a kind, or they may wait and continue to take cards and pass them, and take the spoon later. After they take their spoon, they will place it in their player area and continue playing as usual. All other players will have to notice one of the spoons was taken and grab a spoon after they notice. 1 player in the game will not get a spoon. Part of the fun of the game is that players can get very focused on the passing of cards and can fail to notice that a spoon was taken. After all players have collected their spoons, the player who got a 4 of a kind must show their cards to all players. A round of spoons ends after all of the spoons have been claimed. The player who did not get a spoon will receive a penalty. There are 2 different variations of the game. Players can decide which penalty to use. One variation of the game will give a player that fails to get a spoon a letter of the word spoon. So if this player did not gain a spoon this round, they would get an S. If they failed to get a spoon the next round, they would get a P. If this player failed to get a spoon the next round, they would get an S. As the game goes on, players will do their best to not spell the word spoon. If a player does spell spoon, they will be out of the game. After a player is eliminated from the game, one of the spoons will also be removed, so there is always 1 less spoon than there are players in the game. As players continue to spell spoon, they will be eliminated, and they will take 1 spoon with them when they go. The last player standing wins the game. This version of the game is great if players would like a longer game. The other variation of the game involves immediately eliminating a player that does not get a spoon. A spoon would be removed from the game after the player was eliminated. Each round, one player will be eliminated when they don't get a spoon, and one spoon will be removed from the game. The last player standing wins the game. This version of the game is best if players are looking for a shorter game. After the round ends, the player to the left of the current dealer will become the new dealer, assuming they are still in the game. They will deal out 4 new cards to each player, and the round will play out the same way the previous round played.